So it's my pleasure this morning to introduce our guest speaker. Scott Wyman has a master's in divinity and an MA. He is a student and teacher of the path of liberation through meditation. He has practiced and taught for over 35 years. He's a psychotherapist by profession. He has come to focus on the psycho-spiritual process whereby healing gives way to awakening. Scott will facilitate the personal adventure through a 10-week class here at the center, beginning, as you heard, this Tuesday. And today he introduces us to the Reconnecting to Being. Please help me give a warm welcome to Scott Wyman.
Very lovely to be here. First of all, can we do this? Can you turn these down a little bit and that up a little bit so that I can kind of like have a feel, be able to see you, and oh, that's so much better. Good people out there. It's so cool to know. So I appreciate the opportunity to come and share some thoughts with you. I was due to be here on the 5th and got sick. I don't get sick very often, but my grandchildren were happy to share with me. So weird. Do you remember when you had kids, they were young kids, and they'd come home from school, and they just would have bugs that you had no immunities to? Well, it's happening again. So thank you for your patience and for those that stepped in on my behalf. I am going to be talking today about a topic that I'll be exploring more fully for 10 weeks here starting Tuesday night. I call it a 10-week class adventure because we never know exactly what's going to happen in it, but it's lots of fun. It's full of discussion and meditation and experiences that are designed to help us go much more deeply into ourselves. And especially with this one, this is called Reconnecting to Being, exploring the self to discover the self. Exploring the personality self to discover the divine self. And so this is a very important thing. Some time ago, Bill and Sally were in my office, and they came because they were struggling in their marriage. I should say Bill and Sally are not their real names. So if there happens to be a Bill and Sally here today, I'm not talking about you. So Bill and Sally were here, and they had this dynamic going that's very, very common for couples. She was saying, I need him to show up more. I need him to be closer to me more. I need more connection with him. I need more intimacy with him. And he was saying, get off my back. Is that familiar? So this is a very common thing. And we went round and round with this. And finally, Bill, in exasperation, said to me, she wants me to change. And I don't want to change. And she just kind of shook her head, looked at me, kind of like, help. By the way, how long do I have here? What am I going to?
Till about quarter till.
Till about quarter till.
25 minutes or so.
Till 1? No. It's been a while since I've only had 25 minutes. I usually have 2 hours. So I'll try to keep myself under control. So I tried to help Bill and Sally understand something, and it's something that I'd like to help you to see today as well. Thanks, Al, for bringing this up. Do I have an eraser up here as well? So I know how to... No. Okay. So
How about some Kleenex?
I'll use this space wisely. All right, being and doing. These are very, very different things. Doing, of course, is, we'll look at this more carefully in a minute, but doing, just to talk about Bill and Nancy, has to do with, thank you, by the way, for the eraser. Doing has to do with the things that we do and the things that we accomplish and how we show up in the world and what people see, right? Being is something completely different, isn't it? On a doing level, Sally was saying, I need him to be more available to me. He was a real busy man and spent most of himself at work and would come home and kind of check out as soon as he got home. She was saying, I need more connection with him. I need him to be interested in me. I need him to share his life a little more deeply with me. Right? But what was Bill feeling as she was saying this to him? Anybody have an idea?
More pressure.
More pressure. She was feeling, that's right. He was feeling criticized and controlled, right? On this level, he was feeling criticized and controlled, and it didn't help, of course, that he had grown up with a mother who had been very domineering, right? He was beginning to see, he was seeing Sally through the lens of his history, right, as we all do. What was he trying to say when he said, I don't need to change? She's trying to change me, and I don't want to change. I don't need to change. Do you have any idea what he was saying there?
Autonomy, self-determination.
Certainly, certainly. He was saying, in essence, in ways that he didn't even fully understand, I want to be loved for who I am. I want to be accepted for who I am. He was talking about this. She was talking about this. Right? He was feeling shamed. You know what shame is? The sense that I'm not good enough, that I'm not lovable, that there's something wrong with me. That's what he was feeling. Every time she said to him, look, I want more of you, and I want more connection with you, and stop working out in the garage so much after work. Come in and be with me. He was feeling shame, like he was hearing her say, you're not enough. And all she was saying is, look, I love you. You matter to me. And because you matter so much to me, I want to feel more connected to you. Did he have work to do on this side? Absolutely. He had lots of things to learn on this side about being in relationship. So do I, by the way, right? And I do it for a living. But he was feeling like something was wrong with him over here, and there was nothing wrong with him over here. To talk about being for a moment, we have to talk, well, it's nice to talk about little kids. How many of you have been parents? Okay, so lots of you. So do you remember one of your children, let's just say when they were 2 or 3? You remember that age, 2 or 3? So precious, isn't it? I have a 3-year-old grandson now. And you know, they talk with these cute little voices, and they still have these little kissable cheeks. I remember when my daughter grew up to the age where she didn't want to be kissed on the cheek quite so much. I thought, I'm going to have to go to Kiss Cheeking Anonymous. I'm addicted to these cheeks. I can't stop kissing them, you know? So precious. So remember your child when they were 2 or 3, right? And would you say that they were precious? Would you say that they were worthy of love? Okay, so here's the trick question. What did they do that made them worthy of love that if they didn't do, they wouldn't be worthy of love? What's the answer to that? Absolutely nothing, right? Because it had their preciousness and lovability had nothing to do with their doings, did it? In fact, they were precious to you even when they were a little obnoxious as they continued to grow up, and they would do things that kind of drove you crazy and so forth. They were still precious to you, weren't they? I met with a dad and a 15-year-old boy one time, and he was an ex-Marine. And the son had been kicked out of school for fighting and being disrespectful with the teachers and so forth, and the dad was just livid. Just so angry at this son. And we spent a couple of sessions together, and at some point we began to talk about this concept of preciousness and how, you know, how at a being level we're all precious. And he looked at me, and he looked back at his son, and he looked back at me, and he said, this kid is not precious. He just needs his ass kicked. No, those were his words. I'm sorry. Is it okay to say that word? Too late. So, you know, of course, I could see that the son was really acting out a lot of the attitude of the father, right? So, in order to bring this home, I I dramatized it a little bit, and I said to the father, okay, so imagine that your son, who of course is grounded, sneaks out of the house tonight. And he gets together with his buddies, and they do some drinking and some joyriding, and they wrap their car up around a tree, and your boy now is in ICU. And I stretched this out and I dramatized it a bit. And you're in ICU standing over the bed of your son, and the doctor says to you, I'm sorry, Mr. So-and-so, I'm not sure he's going to make it through the night. And I took some time to tell that story, and you could see the change come over him. You know, he looked at me, and he looked back at the boy, and he said to me, then none of the stuff that he's into right now would matter at all to me. Right. Right. Because the preciousness is always there, even if it's covered by the doing. The preciousness, the worthiness of love, the inherent lovability is always there, even if it's covered by the doing, isn't it? Now, that's true about you, and it's true about me, but sometimes we forget that. Sometimes we get rather caught up on this side of things, so much so that we lose connection with this. Now, let's look more carefully at what this side really is, because it's not just our behaviors. It's any activity. It's any action, any movement, any activity. This is on the doing level. Well, let's look at ourselves. Thoughts and stories. Where's my pen? Is that activity? Yep. What about emotions? Is that activity? Yep. Even the body itself is activity. You understand what I mean by that? The body is not a stable, solid thing, is it? There are processes that are constantly going on all the time. The body is constantly, for instance, sloughing and replacing its cells, right? You understand all this. The body is in constant flux. On a subatomic particle level, the body is nothing but a swirling cloud of particles, spinning at dizzying speeds, giving the illusion of solidity, right? So the body itself is an activity. So notice what we're talking about. Thoughts, stories, emotions, body. The very personality we identify as me, the body that I identify as me, right? The way that this body functions in the world that I identify as me. This is all doings. It's not being. Can you see that? And can you see that it's a problem when I come to identify myself with what is constantly in flux to the point that I'm completely out of touch with who I really am under that all? So that's what we need to look at a little more deeply is, who am I really? Now, I know I'm talking to a very sophisticated crowd here, people who have looked at this question for long periods of time. I'd like to look at it with a little different picture. By the way, I love interacting with you, so are there any questions up until now? Is some of this making sense? Yes. So then let's look at it in a different kind of a way, in a different picture. Whoa. Okay. So thank you, by the way, for giving me different colors. Those of you that are in my class know I like to draw and make colors. Okay, so let's look at it like this. Okay? So the heart represents being. It's right at the center. It's right at the core. And then, off of that are thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Right? So, these are the things that we normally are so focused on that we come to identify with. Thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, aren't they? So much so that we miss our connection with this. Now, If we look at the way that we come into the world, right? We come into a body. We come out into the world into a mother's arms. Just the very act of coming into the body begins to separate us from our experience of beingness. Shared, harmonious, the dimension of wholeness that we come out of. When we come into a body, when we begin to identify with the physicality and with the senses, then right from that point on, we begin to feel a disconnection with being. We get more caught up in sensation and in an attempt to explain and interpret sensation. And we get caught up in the very compelling energies of emotion that make those thoughts and stories feel real. And the behavior emerges out of this combination of thought and feeling. And then we have reactions from the outside world where people who are caught up in their own stories and feelings and behaviors are interacting with our thoughts and feelings and behaviors. And this forms a drama, doesn't it? The drama of our own personal life and the drama of our interactions and our growing up. And, you know, this is a very compelling thing. And the compelling nature of it continues to pull us away from our sense of connection, our rootedness, our groundedness, our very identification with our own being. When we feel cut off from being, the mind has to make sense of life without any sense of connection to being. And it will make stories up. The stories our mind makes without any sense of connection to being is like the story that a glove would tell about itself without any sense of the hand within. You understand that metaphor? So you slip on a glove, right, and you go out and you do some work. And it looks from an outside perspective like the glove is doing this work. Look at the glove squeeze, look at it open, look at it, do its thing. But actually, what's doing the work? Not the glove. The hand is doing the work. One from the outside doesn't see the hand, one only sees the glove. But the glove can't do that work by itself, can it? If you take the glove off and put it on the counter, can the glove do anything without the hand? Nothing, right? So when the hand of being is taken out of the glove of these different levels, what do we have? We have a corpse. Right? It's just a glove. It's inanimate until the being that we are shows up in it. That's the inner hand. Now, the mind will tell a story about us, not understanding its connection to being, and that story will be false. The story about Scott that we call an ego, or Liz or Connie, or the story that we tell about ourselves without an understanding of our connection to being, without identifying ourselves as being, is going to be an untrue story. And most people will live out their lives operating from this untrue story. Right? And this is why when Christ was on the planet, he said, you won't have freedom until you know the truth. When you know the truth will set you free. Right? Now, this isn't a conceptual knowing. This is an experiential knowing. This is a knowing in the bones. This is a deep knowing, and until we have that deep knowing, we're still going to operate from the untruth that we have used to identify ourselves for years and years and years. Let's use one more picture. Questions? Please.
What you're calling untruth, I think of as incomplete truth. Because you're basing whatever, your mind and your body, and you're reacting to a lot of things.
Sure.
And when you say untrue, it sounds like it's a lie or something, but it's just incomplete. It doesn't have the whole picture.
Yeah, okay, I like that. We'll use that. Let's rewind and put that word in. Except, the mind does tell lies. And I don't mean that the mind is evil at all. It just says things that aren't fundamentally true. When I or a client that sits with me is talking about their inherent unworthiness for love, that's an untruth. We could just use the word, that's a lie. Her mind in that moment, his mind in that moment is telling a lie. And if they're living according to that lie, it's very, very, very painful. So, but yes, it is an incomplete truth. It's the beginning, it's the mind trying to understand something, right? Coming to a conclusion that isn't complete. So I like that as well. Other questions? Let's look at another picture. I almost brought this with me. I went out, well, I didn't go out. I sat down and bought off of eBay, I bought an overhead projector. You remember overhead projectors? Oh, those are so awesome. I mean, they don't even have them anymore, right? Because they've replaced them with, those digital, the projectors that hook right into your computer and all that, which I think that's very cool too. But I love overhead projectors, mostly because they serve as such a wonderful metaphor. So let's look and see how a overhead projector works.
It's only going to work so long for a certain generation.
I know. I know, it's true. My grandkids are going to go up and go, overhead what? So I'm not going to take a lot of time here. All right, so it kind of looks like that. You get the idea? Say yes, you get the idea. Thank you. So now the overhead projector, how does it work? There's this really brilliant light right down here, right? I'm sorry? Oh, I didn't hear. So now how it works is there's a transparency, right? And it has patterns of shape and color on it, words, pictures, whatever. And the light shines through it. Where's my light? Sorry. It has to be color coordinated. The light shines through it, caught by the lens, and the lens projects it out onto the screen. You see how that works? Isn't this cool already? Aren't you just feeling how great this is? Now, you have to come to the class, though, because I actually have a real one. And we're going to play with it. And we're going to use actual transparencies. It's going to be so cool. So here's the deal. Out here on the screen, we've got this image. Let's say that it is of a person. Where does this image come from? It comes from the transparency, doesn't it? It's not inherent to the screen. The screen doesn't produce it. It comes from the transparency. If we traded this transparency out with something else, we'd have a different image, wouldn't we? But what makes it possible for the patterns of shape and color on the transparency to show up on the screen? What makes it possible? The light. This is such a brilliant group. It's just like they were ahead of me on this. It's the light that makes it possible, isn't it? Right? In fact, what this image is, actually, it's camouflaged light, isn't it? That's all it is. It's light that's been conditioned by these patterns of shape and color. That's all it is. And it actually doesn't matter whether the image is pleasant or unpleasant. Whether it's a lovely beach scene, Kauai with whatever. It doesn't matter if it's that or some terrible ghetto scene or whatever. It doesn't matter. It's still camouflaged light. It is always the light that makes manifestation possible. And if you track back into the manifestation far enough, you're always going to find light. This is being. This is our true nature. It always has been and it always will be. And it's not my being, it's shared being. There is only one. manifesting through innumerable transparencies to produce in the outer world a sense of great diversity and sometimes chaos. Track that back far enough, you're going to come back to being, always come back to being. Now, can you see how important it is to not just know this conceptually, but to be able to track back experientially to where you know in the deepest part of you that you are the light? Not just that you've read it in a good book and gone, wow, that is a really profound concept. I like that. I mean, that's a nice start, but it's not until we feel it in our bones. It's not until we, what we say, realize it, right? Not until we realize it in our experience that we are the light. That what's happening here at this level is not so deeply important. Now, to get there, the only way I know to get there, to the experiential level we're talking about, the only way I know to get there is by exploring, first of all, you have to explore the transparency. You cannot go around the transparency to get to the light. I'm sorry to say that. If anybody could have done it, I would have done it. I have spent the last 30 years exploring psychological and spiritual traditions, and at least for the first 10 of those years, I was looking for a way to go around the transparency and directly into the light. I did not want to have to deal with my own shame and my own despair and my own sadness and my own loneliness and my own confusion. I didn't want to have to deal with that. I wanted to get right to the good stuff. And it simply doesn't work like that, not in my experience. We have to actually lean into those things, those parts of ourselves that we have been avoiding, sometimes all of our life, or for lifetimes. We have to lean into those parts of ourselves, explore them, see the inherent insubstantiality of them in order to drop into the light that we are. And that's what we're going to be doing in this class that I'll be sharing with you in the next 10 weeks, starting Tuesday night and going for 10 weeks. Now, I just have to answer this question real quick before I finish up. It's a summer class, which means people are on vacation and people are coming and going. You don't have to come to every single class if you're going to be on vacation or whatever. I'm going to be videotaping them. The ones that you'll miss will be hopefully made available to you. So if you're interested, I've got a sign-up sheet here. I think there's a sign-up sheet in the back, and that's all I'm going to say about that. I'm not actually trying to sell this to you. I just want you to know that it's available. So what I'd like to do, can I take 5 more minutes? So what I'd like to do is take 5 more minutes and do in 5 minutes what normally in the class we would take 20, 25 minutes to do, which is I'd like to do a little meditation with you. Because all this has been nice to say, but I'd like to see if for a moment I can just help to facilitate an experience where you get this, where you taste this. And of course many of you have your own practices and you taste this in your own life all the time, and so that's a beautiful thing. So now I want to breathe a little bit. In yoga, we talk about the 3-part breath, which is a letting go and expanding through the belly, and then an expansion through the ribs, and then an expansion and a lifting at the chest. So see if you can get a feel for that. As you inhale, opening through the belly, feeling the rib cage expand, and then even the breastbone rise a little bit, feeling the breath coming all the way up into the clavicles. And then as you breathe out, the exact opposite. The chest drops, the ribs contract, and then the belly moves back toward the spine. That's the exhalation. Inhale, expand through the belly, expand through the ribs, lift the chest. And then as you exhale, the exact opposite. Make sure at the end of the exhalation that you're using a little stomach musculature to draw the navel back to the spine. Begin to make this breathing freer and easier. Don't worry so much about the mechanics. This is meant to facilitate a very deep and satisfying breath experience. No break at the bottom, no break at the top. You're making a breath loop. Inhale, followed by exhale, followed by inhale. Now, begin to increase the rhythm a little bit. We're going to breathe a little more vigorously. Inhale, exhale. Inhale, exhale. A little quicker. And then just be still. Just rest and be still. Rest your awareness in your heart center, in the center of the chest. Don't analyze anything. Don't think about anything. Attune to stillness. See if you can begin to feel that there is an amazing, incomprehensible spaciousness in the heart. So your awareness stays with the spaciousness in the heart. No matter what's going on in the mind, the mind might be thinking, it might be analyzing, but awareness is centered in the heart center. Attuning to stillness and spaciousness. And then allow your awareness to notice that the spaciousness within the heart is connected to the spaciousness around the body. The spaciousness of the room. And then notice that the heart can be aware that there is a connection between the spaciousness within the heart and the spaciousness around the body to the spaciousness that is just inherent in the universe. The field that Connie was referring to when she was quoting Rumi. Out beyond the ideas of right and wrong. Out beyond the ideas of me and you. There is a field. It is both within and without, because the idea that the body and mind is a boundary is actually an untruth. There is only this open, spacious field of pure consciousness. What in yoga is called Satchidananda. Existence, consciousness, bliss. And you have always been this. And you will always be this. And what is needed in the world today are people who are living from this in the world. May you and I grow together in our ability to be this as individuals and as a collective in a way that makes a difference in the world. And so it is.